All right, so check this out. International Women's Day protest against the enslavement of women, the erasure of trans people, and the whole Trump MAGA fascism scratched out. Kind of looks like something some incel Trump bro would do, right? Except no, this is Talia Jane, the counter-revolutionary, proven liar and wrecker who likes to pose as some kind of radical. So what's going on here? Today we're going to take this apart, refute it, and help raise standards overall because that is so necessary in the face of this fascist juggernaut. So let's look at the first bright red flag. Talia Jane scratches out or crops out every single QR code, website, or social media handle that would enable you to go and look for yourself at the views being put forward by those she's attacking and distorting and slandering. She also uses scare words like transphobic and queerphobic and cult, words designed to make you recoil and shut off your critical thinking. Now, if somebody's being honest, even if they're disagreeing, they should want to portray and engage with the very best arguments of those they're disagreeing with. And they should not be afraid of you going to look for yourself. But Talia Jane is spewing lies, and she knows this would be obvious if you went and looked. So she has to crop this out. Now think about this. She's attacking me for being a transphobe, while she is scratching out a protest I'm helping organize that is literally against the enslavement of women and, wait for it, the erasure of trans people. Come on now. And she attacks Bob Avakian for being a queerphobe. Listen to this from over 20 years ago.
It remains a fact that those whose sexual orientation does not conform to the dominant male-female relations, or who in one way or another do not fit the stereotypes of what a man and a woman is supposed to be in this society, they are cruelly persecuted and discriminated against and often subjected to vicious and brutal attacks.
I'll play more of that very moving clip from Bob Avakian later in this video. But first, let me cut to the heart of why counter-revolutionaries and movement hacks and opportunists everywhere go so hard after the Revcoms and after Bob Avakian in particular. This is because Bob Avakian is fighting for the most radical and liberating revolution in all of human history. Because Bob Avakian has walked the walk since becoming a revolutionary back in the 1960s alongside the leaders of the Black Panther Party. Bob Avakian has solved the biggest problems in the project of making revolution. So today we have the understanding we need not only to bring down this rotten, illegitimate system of capitalism, imperialism, but to put a whole different, much more liberating system in its place on the road to real emancipation. Among other things, Bob Avakian had the intellectual courage to break with long-standing traditions in the communist movement that downplayed the need to take up the fight for the liberation of women in its own right, and that carried over backwards and outmoded thinking on sexual orientation and gender. Bob Avakian had the intellectual integrity to sum this up openly so that everybody could learn from it. And Bob Avakian has advanced humanity's understanding of the need to place the fight against all of patriarchy's chains at the center of the fight for the complete emancipation of all of humanity. Now, if you are for real liberation, this is a great thing. If that's you, go engage it right now at Bob Avakian Official. But if you're somebody invested in this system, especially if you're somebody who's invested in this system, but you like to pose as some kind of radical, but you don't want to do the work, you don't want to make the sacrifice, you don't want to go against the tide in the way that's needed to actually make a revolution, then you hate this, and you hate Bob Avakian, because his mere existence exposes the emptiness and bankruptcy of what you actually stand for. It's kind of like if Chipotle went around trying to wreck every taqueria in East LA so that you wouldn't find out what the cuisine is actually supposed to taste like. Only the stakes are obviously so much higher. Look, there's a lot more lies packed into Talia Jane's latest screed, but all this has already been answered by Rise Up for Abortion Rights, by the Revcoms, and by me, repeatedly. The point is, Talia Jane, like counter-revolutionaries and movement opportunists everywhere, is counting on you not looking into this for yourself. She's counting on you staying away from this protest on International Women's Day and from the larger struggle being spearheaded by Refuse Fascism to unite all who can be united, to stand up against and defeat Trump MAGA fascism. Most of all, she's trying to scare you away from engaging honestly and with an open mind with the one revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian, with a vision and blueprint for how we get beyond this whole system that gave rise to this fascism and so many other atrocities. Whatever her intentions, Talia Jane is acting as a tool of this system. Her attacks are fueling and serving Trump MAGA fascism. Don't let yourself and don't let others be plagued by this. Come out, bring your rage, bring your fury, bring your voice on International Women's Day. Stand up against these divide and conquer tactics. Be part of uniting all who can be united, to stand up and say no. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. With that, as promised, let's return and go out with this very powerful and moving clip from Bob Avakian more than 20 years ago.
Many people know what happened to Matthew Shepard, a young gay student in Wyoming. He was taken by some good old boys because he annoyed them at being gay. They brutally beat him to death, and that wasn't all. They hung him up on a barbed wire fence, calling to mind the lynchings that I've spoken of. This is what happens in this greatest of all countries. This is a result of the kinds of relations and values that are represented by so-called leaders of the land like Bush with their whole cowboy thing. A little lesser known story is the story of Sakia Gunn, a 15-year-old African-American lesbian from Newark, New Jersey, who was beaten to death one night in that state. It wasn't bad enough that she was beaten to death, but then the school officials and other authorities in the city completely ignored this. Usually when a youth is killed in the city, they have some kind of ceremonies, some kind of memorials. They had none of that for her until this became such an outrage that they had to back up. And among this was not only the outpouring of people in general, but the outpouring of teenage black lesbians who before that had been forced into the shadows. And then there is the terrible, devastating disease AIDS, and the cynical way in which the government and powerful financial interests have dealt with this. While at times making a few sounds about how AIDS is a terrible thing and the resources of government should be used to fight this disease, the United States government has never followed through on this in any serious and consistent way. And the drug companies and others in the health industry, as they call it, have never undertaken the research or provided the treatment that is called for. Whatever they have done has been guided for their concern for the bottom line and whether they can make a healthy profit, regardless of the health of people.